Very exciting. We have Damian Jennings with us, head coach at the University of Calgary. Thank you for joining us, Damian.
You're welcome. I look forward to it.
So give us like a little rundown of where you grew up, how basketball got into your life, and kind of what happened at the beginning.
Sure. I mean, probably a very similar story to many. There's always one or two people in your life that, had that impact. And for me, it was a phys ed teacher, a PE teacher. I lived in a small rural town in the southwest of England as a youngster, and he was great. His name was Ronnie. He was into all the sports, but he was a basketball player. And we were just starting to get a club, because we do a club league rather than an educational model in the UK. Starting to set up a club called the Taunton Tigers, and basically he played in that whilst he was our phys ed teacher. And I grew up between 11 and 16 at secondary school, doing all sports, but falling in love with the game around about 14 years old. So he was pivotal to that. And the fact that we had what we call a national club, a national team club, where we could play weekend basketball, not just school basketball, I guess, meant that it went a little further than maybe any of the other sports we kind of played. So he was the early impact when it comes to basketball specifically.
It's funny. I had a similar situation with me, but everyone's got a different person, right? Like it was this guy or it was this lady who kind of gave us a chance and kind of got us going. So it's cool to always remember who got you there.
It is.
So did you played in? So it was a state model, or how did it work?
So you always represented your school, but it wasn't nearly to the kudos or level that it is here, and almost because sport was provided for by clubs. So the best coaches, the ones that were taking it more seriously, were always in clubs, and that's from participation level up to performance. So I guess the difference is where you might have a club with a U17 and a U15. For us, it was like first, second, third, fourth teams at all the age groups. And then there was that senior team that you always aspired to or went to watch after your games. And we're talking anyone who was good enough at 18, 19, all the way up to professional players at 40 years old or whatever it may be, still trying to play. And so that's how the UK and actually Europe operates as far as clubs. Now you're starting to see some more of these kind of prep school type models where you've got academies, but wasn't around when I was there. Representing your school was still something great. And as a basketball player, you did high jump for the school. Then you went and then you ran next door and did soccer or whatever it is you did. But we did it all, but nothing to the level that when you're a high school basketball player here, it's serious. It's a big deal. And although it's fragmented into a small chunk of the year, it's on a much higher level and recognized within the year. Whereas in the UK, school basketball doesn't really mean that much. It's more about club basketball.
Yeah, for sure. So then you play for a while. How long did you play till?
Well, actually, I dislocated both my shoulders, which kind of put any further playing. I went to university and I was looking to get to the US at some point, and then dislocated both my shoulders and tried to come back. And in essence, it wasn't quite the way I wanted it to go. So then I started coaching a little bit more, and you can't do both at the same time, particularly if there's a national league going on the weekends and you were trying to coach one team. And then I was a player coach with a men's program, and that definitely doesn't work very well. So really, I was starting to look at, what choices am I going to make? And I actually went out in industry and did some middle management roles in retail, because business studies and that side of the degree was where my passions were from that side. And really then just channeled the sport into the academia side. So then I started to pick up my master's, started to work with the basketball program, and ultimately got asked to take over what was really just a single team on the women's side way back when. And then we just turned it into one of the best basketball clubs in the country. And really that's where the next part of the history started. So
you start coaching. You get going, you build up this women's basketball club. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that experience like to kind of start with one team and have to grow it? And then how did you guys do? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think, this is sort of stories that you and I could go and have a beer over for a few hours, right? Because you've done the same on a much grander scale. So I was doing it with senior women, some of which were at university, some of which had, gone out and had 2 children and come back again. And that's the beauty of club basketball, is you're getting lots of different, layers or chapters of people's lives, but still there's basketball. And, Yeah, I literally was, that one coach was on his way out and they asked me to take over. And I just said, look, there's a certain way I would like it done. And I want to be all in, and this is what it's going to look like. And I was kind of had an idea of basing a club at the university and then using their facilities and, springboarding off the back of the fact that we're always going to have youth talent coming through, which is the norm, obviously, in youth sport. But there, it wasn't the highest level. Club basketball was the highest level. And building that relationship, because I was actually a lecturer at the university. So it made sense to try and do that. So then we literally took them from a Division II program, National League, to eventually a Division I champion with, I would say, 60% of our team were then professional or semi-professional players. We would utilize master's programs to pay that and the accommodation to get ex-NCAA, maybe the European pro that's on their way down in their career, perhaps as far as the best of their basketball, but obviously had a lot to offer still. Attract the best 18 to 21-year-olds that weren't going to the US at the time to come and study at the university in Cardiff where I was. And literally that was the case. It was like you, running a program, building a program. And the difference, I guess, between what you and I know here is that trying to ensure that your growth was first team to second team to third team. The university played on the week, the club team played on the weekend, and everyone had basketball. So quite often people ask, well, what's the major difference between where you were in the UK and Canada? And I said, well, one of the most challenging things is that you have tough conversations with a 13th, 14th, 15th player in a squad, if you're all healthy, that don't get to play basketball, and those players are good. They're some of the best players. They might be young, or they might be that, maybe there's a fifth who's just slightly more talent, or whatever the reason is. Whereas we might have 15 training with our first team, and there'll be a high-minuted player for the second team if they don't make, and that decision's made on a Thursday, ready for the Saturday game. Right. So, it's slightly different business model, but no different to you. Just built that program from one team up to another team, up to another team, another age group, another level, and then that helped me, I guess, put my name out there, and I got the international jobs as well then, because I was involved with Wales. And Great Britain basketball then had the money for the 2012 when they amalgamated Scotland, England, and Wales. Became Great Britain for the first time, probably in about 25 years, I think, 30 years. So, really from there, I was fortunate enough to be offered an apprentice, second assistant type role in 2005, 2006. And then from there, managed to keep my job and keep moving up until I was one of the assistants at the Olympics, and then ran the under-20s program, the World University Games program, so under 24. So I was almost like the head coach of those age groups and feeding back and being a little bit of the continuum between the pathways from junior to senior basketball for Great Britain.
That's fantastic.
It was a great
talk about that Olympic experience playing in the Olympics. We had a bunch of Olympians on, and it's kind of cool to hear what they have to say about the experience.
I mean, I think I have been to another Olympics as a fan. I went to Barcelona in '92 as a kid, so I can talk to that anyway. But to have one in your own country, to host an Olympics and to walk around, I guess, with the GB gear on and know that, every single person is just on cloud 9 around you and they don't even know who you are, right? And you're just walking through the village and out in the facilities there. And of course, the basketball courts are the gym is right next to where the track is in the opening ceremony. And it was just, it's London. London is just one of the best cities in the world. And to be a part of that was obviously a great gift, but at the same time, it was just an unbelievable buzz every day. Like you didn't need to eat. You could just live off the energy. It was just an unbelievable experience and felt very proudly British at the time.
Yeah, no kidding. So, I mean, what an unbelievable journey and a fantastic thing. Why / how did you end up in Canada in Calgary? I mean, it seems like it's going fantastic. You put in your time. You're seeing the fruits of your labor. What brings you to Calgary, and of all the places in the world, what makes you say the CIS is something I need to coach in?
Well, I think similar to your first question, there's always someone that's connected the dots in some way for you. And it was actually another Canadian. It was Ron Wattilla, who was at the time I arrived and the year prior was the athletic director at the University of Calgary. But before that, and how we met was his wife and their family came over. I think she was in oil and gas. and got a job moving to London. He then got involved with Great Britain basketball, literally as this money's coming together and we're putting forward performance pathways for junior programming and the senior team. And our paths actually crossed for about 3 or 4 months whilst he was leading the under-20s program and asked me to take over after, getting to know each other a little bit, but got to know her very well. And again, very grateful to that relationship and the friendship and the mentorship that he's offered me and the relationship we have now. And come 2012, I think he went back to Canada in 2011, but managed to keep the team manager role for the men's senior team at the 2012 Olympics. So he did the UFC thing for a year as the AD, kept doing that, but then moved back for that 2012 summer. So anyway, long story short, whatever changes were going on at UFC, he invited me out to interview with obviously other Canadians and other people in May of 2012. Fortunate enough to get the job. And then literally, as I arrived back in the UK, my wife and I don't see each other really, or at least don't live together for another year and a half. So I did the Olympic thing. So she went back to Cardiff, I went back to London. Days after the Olympics, I'm moving to Calgary. And then she followed in 2013 after sort of shutting down shop in the UK for our lives back there. But really, it's Ron Wattilla and that relationship and that connection. And then, as he said, I still had to come and prove myself in an interview with many other people and was fortunate enough to pass that test.
Fantastic. So you get the job. What's it like your first year? Totally different experience, but still the fundamentals of basketball apply. What kind of got you through that first year, and what was it like to kind of start something totally brand new?
Yeah, great question. I mean, ultimately, the learning curve was steep to everything that is the Canadian way of doing it or the university's way of doing it. Running budgets, managing people, leading a program, being a figurehead. Recruiting obviously was hugely different. We call it poaching in the UK, or you don't do it. It's more of it's done now because there's academies in different geographies. But back then, as a coach, your status, if you like, of how good you may be or what you do was based on a catchment area. When I started to take the club up to another level and we were bringing in professionals, that's slightly different. But as far as recruiting and dare I call it the kind of the line production of working through different age groups, building those relationships, watching those players, and then forecasting almost 3 years, a grade 9 going into grade 10, and that felt very difficult to me. And I would have to say I've only got half good. I'm still not very good at it. Half good, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I just changed my psyche because I felt uncomfortable to start off with because recruiting was very, very different. Like the whole idea of like going to nationals or going to club tournaments and actually not speaking to people. I love talking about our program or, showing people what we do at Calgary, but I just thought it was family time. You play basketball and you got your grandparents and your parents watching. The last thing you want is some weirdo after a game come to say, hey, do you want to come and talk about UFC? And it's just like, well, actually, that's what they do want. So, or that's how it works. So, I would have to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I got better at that. And, always proudly talk of what we're doing at Calgary, but that would be one of the greatest challenges. Everything else, with respect to what we do, I've been involved at the Olympic under-20s. So looking after a budget, running intense programs, dealing with the firefighting that has to exist on a daily basis, having a bit of a business background just in my areas and interests and passions outside of basketball. Those things helped, but there's no doubt people held my hand. I have no doubt that Ron Wattilla as the AD protected me from an awful lot of things that would have been, fires I couldn't have put out in my first year. Loved the travel bit of Canada West. There's some our conference is just a fun conference to be a part of. It's intense and fun and a great experience for the student athletes. So there wasn't, apart from just, the Canadian way or the university's way, or just, having looked back in the rearview mirror after a season to say, well, what's it like to go on, back then it was swing trips. Like to play UBC Friday night and then get on a ferry at 5 a.m., deal with the seasick, and then try and beat Victoria. To get a split on the weekend was just like a big deal.
Yeah.
Where, and teams now expect you to sweep your UBC, your University of Calgary, your whatever, right? So, it's a great challenge. I love this conference.
No, there's definitely some heritage to it, and you're also at a very good school. So talk about University of Calgary for a second. Let's get a little pitch on University of Calgary. Why? Let's say I'm a player and I'm pretty good. Why do I need to go to University of Calgary?
That's again, there are no bad choices in Canada. That's what I think I love about Canada in general. And I'm sorry that doesn't sell UFC particularly well in the first line, but I would say comparatively then to some of the US options where you've got the world's best, but you've got such a range. Canada, you're getting a good education wherever you go. Having been in higher education in the UK as a senior lecturer in business and sports science before, I can make that assessment. I've seen the standards across Canada, and there isn't a bad university academically. UFC obviously has a status, with its number 7, number 8 ranking when it comes to where it's positioned. We don't have to sell that. Your piece of paper at the end of it, for want of a better expression, is going to be valued internationally as well as nationally. Right now, with kinesiology being such a popular pre-med, that side of things, we're number 1 in North America, so we get a lot of interest from that side of it. Calgary being the hub that it is as a city, and where it is on the foothills of the Rockies, and its commutability anywhere. But the basketball program, I think, where we differ is that, and I think people are getting closer to it, but we are, I am an internationally experienced basketball coach. And I don't mean that in offense to others that don't have international experience, because of course there are many in Canada. It's just that I was exposed very early on to such a hybrid of basketball. When you watch the Dinos play, they're pressing for 40 minutes. Well, there's lots of other teams that do that, that press, but they don't do it for 40 minutes. It's not in their DNA to do that. It's a tactical reaction. This is what we do for 40 minutes. And we do it because it's all a continuum. Our defense creates our offense. Our offense then plays at the same pace, has the same kind of philosophy of shot selection, and the action in it is just trying to create the advantage that we don't ever want to lose. So it's not a structured style of basketball in that way. It's structured to the action, and that's well taught, or hopefully, but certainly has detail to it. But the rest really is in what we call breakdown basketball, and teaching the skills of decision-making within that. And I think that's where the game's going, and most people are trending in that direction. But the continuum because I don't think anything is, they're not mutually exclusive. Everything's connected. So let's take your offensive rebounding strategy, for example. It has to be connected to the conversion to defense. It has to have a reflection of your offense. Otherwise, you can't just have these 4 different philosophies on these 4 separate areas. Well, you can, because people do, but I don't think you can or should. So my style of basketball is very much a hybrid of what I'd call the FIBA international game, where I have genuinely tried to put the building blocks together so that there's a connection between all of those different sections of a basketball game. And that's what comes out in our style of play, I think, because we are a little different. We certainly play at a pace, and obviously in our conversion defensively, very different. And then just culturally, I have a development mindset. I have a club basketball mindset. So I just don't believe that players should be retiring at 22 years old. So therefore I coach them like I expect them to be playing afterwards. So there's no rookie or veteran kind of mentality. Like 22-year-old in Europe, you're a baby. You're still a bambino when it comes to basketball IQ and your experience and knowledge of the game. Now, in our little bubble, that 5th year is worth their weight in gold as far as experience and maturation. But, we still had an awful lot to learn just about ourselves emotionally as well as skillfully as we reflect back on being 22. So my job then is in part to sort of use our basketball culture, use our basketball technically and tactically, and use this university experience to try and make sure that they don't stop. This is a continuous improvement idea. And so I really kind of retract from individualizing our sport, we don't do starters that are mentioned. They all are out there in a huddle. Like we every kind of ritual or language that I can adopt or we can use to be more team, more development focused, more, because I just believe the byproduct is we will be good. It's not like we're anti-winning. We love winning. We definitely want to be national champions. We want to be conference champions. We don't focus on it like it's a cutthroat be all and end all of our lives. And that's just the way we go about our business, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, your teams have been very good so far. I mean, you've been there for, not in the grand scheme of things, a short period of time, and realistically, you've been competitive from day one. I mean, your teams are very fun to watch, which is also something I think is important as a player when you're thinking about where you want to go to school. I mean, you recently just picked up Marilyn Lenz from our program, and she's one of my favorite players. Coach, she fits in perfectly with that style. Marin Budeman, I think you guys have as well.
Yes.
If she's fully healthy, she's fantastic as well. That'll be you have a BC backcourt for a while there. It's a good, you're talking 2 MVPs, provincial championship, so it's a good place to go, and they both play that style, so it'll be nice. And you return a very good team as well. Talk about the team returning. You have quite a few players on your team this year. How many players are you projecting to have on your opening day roster?
We'll have healthy-wise, we'll have 15 or 16 players that'll be healthy, and I think that most squads are trending towards that kind of size. Which, again, going back to my first point, is one of the challenges is always going to be difficult when it comes to varsity sport, right? Because I don't think there's a sport in the world actually that's not trending towards larger squads, because you can't afford to lose 3 points on a weekend anymore. It's not like, the old expression where the business end of the season is playoffs, and as long as we're good, then nothing else matters. Those days are gone. If you're not winning on the first weekend, you can pretty much write yourself out of some modeling as far as who hosts playoffs, what happens in the final seedings, what does a wild card look like. So you have to value the day and you have to value the week. And of course, you'd expect that you'd trend in a better direction. But the whole, I'll take this seriously when we get to the business end, those days are gone. And you only have to look at the shuffle of what's gone on in Canada West. So we had UBC first weekend. You're telling me that I have to wait till February, but to tell my players that, well, we're all right, we'll get good then? No, we have to be good by October 23rd when we play UBC in UBC. So, yeah, it's like the squads are the size they are. And I think with the injuries that you and I know better than anyone, because we're on the female side of it, that there are more ACL tears, there are more injuries on that than the men's for whatever reasons, and there are obviously several. But it's also just the nature of that age group, 18 to 22-year-olds. There's a significant independence change in their lives, the stress, the emotional changes and transformations, even sometimes, and it's getting less because of programs like yours where they're doing comprehensive functional strength work. They're getting more, dare I call it, post-secondary ready than ever before. So, it's amazing. By the time you get to the season, sometimes you're going, we've got 12 players healthy, or we've got 11, and we started with 16. And it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely something that we're trying to focus on at a younger age. The stronger kids are, well, number one, you're going to be a better player. I mean, let's be serious there. But, one of the things one of the top strength conditioning guys around here, I was talking to him, I go, what's your philosophy? He goes, my philosophy is I'm not here to make you more athletic. I'm here you're already athletic. I need to make you healthy so you can show off your athleticism. Because if you're not healthy, you're slower. You can't jump as high. You can't rebound as hard. You can't do all the things you need to do. So if you can be healthy, now you can actually show off your athleticism. And so that's a big deal. Back to your career, in your coaching or playing, if you could go back in time and give young Damian a tip, like give him a little heads up. Hey, maybe try this. What would be like a one thing you would kind of go back and give yourself a little bit of advice? Say, hey, maybe you need to take a look at doing this instead.
I've never been asked. I mean, it's the kind of question that you always think of asking other people, but no one ever asks you. So I don't know if I should be grateful or I'm slightly anxious here. Well, certainly I think that I'm just as guilty as the same challenges that my players and the people that I meet and attempt to try and lead well go through. So the same kind of self-talk and analysis and, if anyone probably talks about me, they might say that, he's very fixated on details and values and time. And maybe at times I don't relax around those boundaries, and maybe I shouldn't because it makes me who I am. But, in our sport, the hardest thing is to individualize the team sport. And although I don't want to go down the praise the 40-minute a game player, that's never been my type. It's a team, we, not me thing. But to individualize and connect with people emotionally and all those sort of things is obviously the art of it. So coming back to your question, the thing that I would probably tell myself then that I know now is, you've got to understand that, you know, you don't have to be perfect. And it doesn't mean getting soft on yourself. It just means make sure the next 24 hours, it's not berating or ill self-talk. It is more of a, you know, you are where you, be present where your feet are, and be at peace with the journey. Because I think as a youngster, I probably wasn't.
You know, and it's even more so now. I mean, realistically, mental health right now, kids are getting the wrong information in their head. They're not, they don't have the natural resiliency that maybe they had in the past. They got to find ways to be more resilient. They have to find ways to give themselves positive self-talk. I was talking with one of my players this morning, and I said, I think the number one thing any person can have is the people that they actually get their opinion from that matters, and they're getting the right information. And that's, and they're getting the right answers in their head so that they're playing on a level playing field. I mean, having that positive self-talk, having that balance, and being in the moment, what a huge advantage if you could go back and, you know, tell yourself that. I mean, I could use that information myself. So I'll give that to a young Anthony as well. I'll take it. So now let me ask this question. One of the things I've been asking people is, you know, talk about an obstacle that you've had to overcome in your coaching career that has gotten you here. So it maybe wasn't looking so good at something, and then you have to find a way to figure it out and get to the spot that you're at.
Well, I think sometimes when you answer those questions, you also understand that you've had some fortune injected in at some point. And, you know, I don't know how much you know about the geography, but England is effectively like, I guess, sometimes how we perceive the US to Canada.
Yeah.
And Wales is a little bit like Canada, which is probably why I've fallen in love with this country, because I really enjoyed being in Wales too, but I'm English.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of, you know, small brother, small sister, big sister type thing going on. And being in Wales, politically and landscape wise, it was a very small place, and I was in the capital in Cardiff, but England was where everything's going on. That's where all the resources go. That's where the big basketball is going on and sort of things. So I was always, you know, with my club and my team, we were fighting against that, and we used it. A little bit like sometimes how Canada uses it, certainly on the hockey side of things against the US and stuff. So that was a great obstacle to be working against. And I thought that being from the Southwest and being from Wales in that part, that you wouldn't be seen on a basketball setting. But actually the flip side of it was that politically, as Great Britain became Great Britain, being, dare I call it, a bigger fish in a smaller pond, helped me actually jump up to the top level. So what was in one hand a bit of an obstacle and meant that you're always beating down the big door as the small person, actually became the opposite for me as far as Great Britain basketball. So then the next obstacle was, well, you've got to backfill some knowledge. Like I went straight from being a big fish in a small pond to working with world-class people like Tom Maher and Ken Shields. And I'm having to backfill the knowledge I don't have compared to them. And, you know, that's frightening when you're trying to be a professional producing at the national level, but also exhilarating because that's how you learn. So I would say that those were things that, you know, anyone could have easily stopped the good fight, or got so anxious about that you kind of crumble and fall on the wayside. And thankfully I dug deep and kept going and managed to keep attached to world-class people, and very grateful to where I was in Wales and what that afforded me as perhaps a political luxury to be representing one of the home nations, and therefore I was that representative. So what could have been an obstacle became a fortuitous landing spot. You know, that's kind of,
and I think people need to understand that, like, you know, it's especially athletes nowadays, like from all the people I've been talking to, and I've been interviewing, you know, our top coaches that we have in the country, the journey's like this.
Yeah. Big
and
time.
you're going, and there's a little bit of this too, right? Like it's not even, and you never really know what's going to be a thing that actually takes it to the next level. But then one day the work just kind of pays off, and it didn't look like it was going to work, and then it just kind of fills in, right? And so what a great story.
That's a really valuable point for anyone who's listening to this, what you just said, because I have to tell you, I get at least 5 to 10 emails per week from coaches who aren't coaching professionally, aren't paid to coach, that would like to be doing what I'm doing. And how often do we find ourselves either complaining about our resources or our infrastructure or something going on, and I'll never complain about coaching in Canada. You asked me the question, like, how did you end up here and why Canada and all these sort of things? But this is a 48 coaches on the women's side in youth sports that are paid to do this for a living, and I'm foreign, so there are thousands of Canadian coaches that every day I'm grateful that I was given one of these jobs, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of coaches around the world who are volunteering their time, investing in themselves, who can't quite get that job, and very, very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for having us, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I'm excited to hopefully we get some games so we can watch you guys play this year.
Yeah, me too.
I think you're going to have a great team, and I'm excited to see you guys over the next few years. It's going to be fun.
Great. Thanks for the chat, Anthony. Good to see you.
Gladly.